Aloha, welcome to Return on Wellness, a web series brought to you by Olympian Meeting.
Hello and welcome everybody to this episode of Return on Wellness. I am your host, David T. Stevens. This is season 2, episode 1 of 2024. I am joined today with Maranda Alcarez. Are you the co-founder or CEO? Or
Both of those things.
both? Okay.
Yeah.
Co-founder and CEO of Street Parking. Now, if you Google street parking, the results are confusing. So why don't
Google street parking fitness.
there we go. Okay.
And that
All
should
right.
help.
In the meantime, real quickly, I'd love for you to kind of formally introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background and of course what street parking is, because not as much as we think everybody knows what street parking is, it's just not everyone does.
No, I mean yes, not everyone does for sure. So I started working in fitness when I was I'm not going to go too deep into it. Don't worry. I started working in fitness when I was like just straight out of high school. Actually, I had a boyfriend in high school whose mom was a fitness instructor, like a spinning instructor. For those of
Oh.
you that are old enough to remember Johnny G spinning,
I taught spin for 8 years.
it was the first thing that I did in fitness because she did that and I thought it was super cool. And then was an aerobics instructor, cardio, kickboxing, that kind of stuff. Got into personal training, all while I was going to school for actually interior design, which is the opposite of. But it might play into some of the creativity that we have here. I found CrossFit in 2007.
Okay.
And I was already a trainer. I opened a gym in Salt Lake City, Utah called CrossFit 801. It was the first CrossFit affiliate in that area. I think in Utah, actually.
It had to have been early if it was an area code or a city name.
Exactly. If you actually got that. Yeah. And so I had that gym for several years, ended up moving to Northern California to work full time for CrossFit. And I was on their seminar team from 2008 until 2016. So for 8 years, worked over 300 seminars for them. So it was
Wow.
almost every weekend. I know for sure in 2010, I worked 47 weekends.
How do you know that number?
Because I went and figured it out, and I was actively competing in CrossFit at the same time. So 2 of those weekends I was competing. So I had like 3 weekends off.
I don't know that I'd call competition weekends as a weekend off.
No. So I think maybe Christmas and New Year's were the only weekends that I wasn't doing something like that. And we would travel all over the world. Like I went to Australia and Iraq and Afghanistan and Korea and Chile and Argentina and just everywhere.
Yeah, I heard you mention you were on like a DC-9 with Greg and Dave and
C-130. Is
C-130. Sure.
Yeah. It was a cargo plane for sure when we went to Iraq in 2009, which is just super dangerous. Anyway, so I did that for 8 years while also actively competing, and I competed at the CrossFit Games a few times. And then started working for a supplement company while I was still working on the seminar staff. And there was some logistical changes that were happening within CrossFit and their seminar team and what they were going to require of us. And after 8 years, I was not wanting to be on the road as much anymore. And so I left, not really having a plan. And I just had one job, which for me was weird. I just worked at the supplement company, had way too much free time on my hands. And with my now husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, just randomly thought we would start an Instagram page sharing workouts you could do at home. And that's how street parking was born, which I know you'll ask me some more questions about that. But now we have 35,000 members roughly.
Wow.
And a staff of, there's 20 of us here in Vancouver, Washington. And then we have a bunch of remote workers as well. And we do meetups and we developed an app and all of this stuff. And so Street Parking is an online fitness program and community that is for those who don't have access to, can't afford, live too far away from, or don't enjoy the regular in-person gym environment. And was the original idea. It's grown so much from that, and there's so many different ways we could describe it. I'm sure every member describes it a little bit differently, but that's really what it is. It was good coaching and programming for a very reasonable price that almost anyone can do, and with minimal equipment not a lot of time. You don't need a lot of space to give fitness to people who don't have access to it otherwise. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, you covered a lot of it. And I don't know how much you know about me. I've shared some of it. And congratulations on being my second CrossFit Games athlete to be on the podcast. Shay was on last year,
right.
which we were talking about, who is a mutual friend of ours.
Mhm.
I remember so I taught spin for 8 years, and I worked at 24 Hour Fitness corporate at one point, and I planned their internal meetings and events and their incentive trip where they took people.
Where is 24-hour fitness corporate?
Well, it used to be San Ramon, California.
Okay.
I don't know if it still is, but that was the office I worked out of.
Okay.
And it taught me, that's where I learned, oh, you don't have to do a meeting the same way everyone else does, because, at 24, you have a wide variety of people when it comes to former D1 athletes or aspiring bodybuilders that could be pro, could be semi-pro. And so when they come into an event, their meals are critical to them.
Mhm.
So, and the first thing our CEO's admin said to me is, don't ever, if there's 25 people coming to a meeting, don't ever order for 25 because there will not be enough food.
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
Which I'm sure you have seen. I first heard about CrossFit probably in like 2011.
Okay.
And my now wife, girlfriend at the time, was trying to convince me I should try CrossFit.
This is when you were still at 24.
Well, I heard about CrossFit when I was at 24,
Okay.
and then I got out of it, and I just kept kind of doing my thing. So I met her a couple years later, and I was like, that shit's dangerous. What are you doing?
What kind of training were you into?
I was doing bodybuilding stuff.
Okay.
Typical stuff, and then I do cardio. So
Okay, of course.
pretty traditional, right?
Yeah.
I was still teaching spin.
So
and
was
then
I, by the way,
and then
before I
blitzed.
found CrossFit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I finally, actually, she loves this story. So she got us a gym. We lived 45 minutes away from each other. So she got us a gym membership near her house because I would stay there sometimes. And she would go and she would lift with me, very traditional stuff. And one day she goes, hey, will you just try one of my workouts? And I was like, ugh. And she's a former box owner as well. And she had me do something with overhead squats.
Oh my God, that's mean.
Yeah,
She just wanted to make you look dumb on the
you've
very
met
first
her.
day.
So we're in this area that's like, it's basically like a high school weight room. There's turf in the middle of it.
Okay.
It's where all the free weights are.
Yeah.
And she makes me do overhead squats with a broomstick because I had no mobility.
Of course not. You tear your pec.
Right. She's doing like 95 pounds and I'm using a broomstick in the middle of the weight room.
Wow.
And I felt really stupid. And I was like, this is dumb, whatever. And I woke up the next morning, I could barely lift my arms.
Wow.
And I thought, okay, there's something there. I have a lot to learn.
Yeah.
So I think that that's how I got started with CrossFit. And then then I said, okay, I'll go to a gym. And then we started going to CrossFit. But then the pandemic happened, and that's when I got introduced to you guys. So you left CrossFit in, you said 17 or 16?
So the last time I competed was in 2015, and I tore my ACL in the competition, which took our team out of it. And then I stopped working for CrossFit in 2016, like fall. And like two months later, if that, is when we started street parking.
Okay. So we talked about this a little bit before. Lots of people have lots of ideas.
Yeah.
Everybody has an idea. What really was there something that happened, or I'm sure the injury didn't help, but like, was there something that really triggered you to go, okay, let's pull the trigger on this. Let's do it. Let's try it.
Yeah. I think, the interesting part of our story to a lot of people based on how large street parking has gotten is that it was never intended to do so. Like we weren't looking for a business idea. Like, hey, let's start a business. Like what kind of a business can we have? I have been a person who's had random Instagram pages or like communities that I've built just for fun. One example of that is back in like, I don't want to say like 2013, 2014, the group of us that were training together at NorCal CrossFit was like a very well-known, it was like a group of celebrities that got together every day to work out, basically. And everybody in that group was super cool. We were all genuinely really good friends, and the vibe was really funny. And there was these big personalities, and I was like,
What was you and
it
Kalipa
was me and
and
Jason and Neil Maddox and Molly and Garrett Fisher, and it was just like I just said we should showcase this and just put out, hey, this is what we did today. And nobody should do it. Like, it's a really bad idea, actually.
because you
for
probably
anyone to
had
participate.
ridiculous things
They
seeing
were
how to break each
ridiculous.
other.
They were ridiculous, but people love it, like people, the CrossFit community eats that stuff up. And so it wasn't like hey, this is a good program for you to follow as a regular person. It was like, hey, this is what we did. If you want to do it, do it.
No, we're going to do something ridiculous. We advise you not to do. It was like CrossFit meets Jackass.
Exactly. But we would like, it was when Instagram was still pretty new and it was just growing. And so we had that, and we ended up doing a couple, one for sure, maybe two meetups where people would come in and train with us for 2 days. And it was just fun. So this was just another idea like that. It was, well, I have this big following. I had something like 330,000 followers or something like that. Julian had qualified for the games and competed in the games also. And we had just moved in together. And so it's like, oh, well, we're going to be training in our garage together now. And I have this deep held belief that I know because of my own experience that you can gain and maintain a pretty impressive level of fitness. I'm not talking about competitor, but just as a person in life with not a lot of time and not a lot of equipment. Because I traveled so much, I worked out in so many hotel gyms, and some hotels didn't even have it. And I would just run up and down the stairs in the stairwell and would then go home and still be able to train to compete. And I knew that because I had experienced it. And I felt like not many people understood how simple it can actually be. But you just have to be consistent with it, and you have to, go for it.
I'm going to go off script a little bit here in this sense, because I think that's a big thing in our industry. We travel a lot. Like last year, I logged 150,000 flight miles. It's probably back to your days.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like
and it's a lot of hotels.
Yeah.
And you don't always have a lot of equipment, and that's something that I've really enjoyed with this programming now. But you didn't have anything at that time because you were just on the road trying to maintain yourself. And I think there's a lot of people who can use, oh, I'm at a hotel and the gym sucks, as
all they have is like 2 machines, or whatever.
Right. Well, you could do speed intervals, you can do push-ups, you can do squats.
I mean, there's just so much you can do even in your hotel room. You can do, push-up taps and air squats and burpees, and you can jump over something. And I remember when I was training to compete, I was like working on handstand stuff in my hotel room because it's, I could do that. And so the idea initially was, hey, like we're working out at home a lot now. Let's post our workouts on Instagram, and then people can follow them if they want. And then I had a relationship.
But let's make them reasonable this time.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, yes. And I had a relationship with Wodify because I knew Wodify because that's a logging system for those of you guys that have no idea what I'm talking about. Wodify was just a way to log your workout so that people could see the workout. We could put some coaches' notes and stuff in there, and then they could log it and keep track of it. And they actually processed our payments for us too.
Oh.
All for very cheap on our end. So we linked up with them, and we are like, cool, maybe we'll have like 100, 200 people, a small little community that are these people that maybe they're just stuck at home or they're traveling so much that they can't be a part of a gym. And so a week after we started the Instagram page, I found out that I was pregnant.
Oh.
Which was not planned. And we moved in together like all within like that 2-week period. And so as soon as I learned that I was pregnant, I didn't think that anyone was going to want to participate in our program because I had a following based on my athletic performance and the way that I had looked and like this persona of this like top level athlete. And I was like, no one wants to follow the pregnant lady program. Well, little did I know, a lot of people are pregnant.
I was going to say.
At all times, actually.
There's a lot of people that have had babies.
I think it's something like over 80% of women on the planet or something like that. So it's just not something that I had processed because up until shortly before that, I didn't even think that I was going to have kids. And so, it wasn't designed for parents. Like as much as our community now is so heavy on the parents of small children, it wasn't even a thought in our mind. It was people who travel and people who can't afford gyms or live too far away from their gyms or whatever. And so we were like, well, no one's going to sign up. No one wants the Pregnant Miranda program. We had like 700 people join in the first week.
Wow.
And it wasn't until that point that we were like, oh, like this could be a thing.
Did you have like a little bit of a, oh crap. Like,
Yes.
this is shit. We have to do something with
Yeah,
this
because
now.
it was going to be like a side hustle. And I was pregnant. I had a job, and Julian was running a company that did meal prep also. So he had a company that he was running with his mom. And I was over here. I had my full-time supplement gig, and I was pregnant. And then, yeah, overnight we had 700 people who were relying on us and trusted us with delivering what they needed for their fitness. And that's really how we saw it. I think that's a difference in mindset from a lot of people who started business too. We didn't see the opportunity. I mean, we did, but more so we felt a responsibility. These people paid us $19, which is not a lot of money, but they're excited about it, and they're going to be looking at their phone every day saying, what am I doing today? And now we're responsible for helping these people. And something that I knew as a personal trainer and growing up and working in gyms is that people will, it's easy to get people to sign up for
Right.
a gym membership.
Agreed.
It's not so easy to get them to continue or to not have them cancel. Or as a personal trainer, you can always get them to start. It's how you're going to, and they will sign up, but they will quit. People will quit a program. They're not going to quit a relationship. And so very early on.
Hold on. Dude, like, that was just a soundbite. People will say that again.
People will quit a program, but they're not going to quit a relationship. Is something that I've believed even back when I had my gym, right? So my idea was, because when I had my gym, we had the gym, it was like 5 years before street parking started is when I left the gym to move. And it was always that. It was build a relationship, and people will stay. Only worry about the program, and you're going to lose people, because what you need to build here is a community. So I took all the things that I would do at my gym at CrossFit 801, and I was like, how do I do that online, which is very tricky.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Especially then.
Yes. Very tricky. So it was like we were committed, and it was just Julian and I at first. We were committed to commenting on every Facebook post, and anyone that used the hashtag street parking on Instagram, we commented on. We followed back every single one of our members. I was personally answering every email. When someone signed up, I was personally emailing them saying, oh, so glad you joined us, like whatever.
This is 2017, right?
This was early 2017.
Okay.
Yeah. The first official workout was on January 1st of 2017.
Wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's I think one of the reasons you probably had so much success was because of the fact that you did it from a place of authenticity. You had experienced the frustration and the challenge of trying to travel,
Mm-hmm.
and you realized that there was an opportunity for people that could do something anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I first heard about you guys in 2018, I want to say it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I had confession. My first thought was the same thought I had about CrossFit. I was like, yo, they're just posting videos and like expecting people to know how to like clean and jerk and do snatches. That seems insane.
Yeah.
And then I learned otherwise.
You know what the crazy thing about that is, though? If you go back to CrossFit far enough, when I started CrossFit, it was that. There was no gym for me to go to. I've never been a member at a CrossFit gym. So all I had was Nicole and Annie and, those OG CrossFit people. And I'm watching. When I first did the workout, Fran, which is most of your listeners might not be CrossFitters. It's just a very well-known workout in the CrossFit space, but you have to get the bar up onto your shoulders.
Yeah.
I couldn't get the bar onto my shoulders to do it because I didn't know how to do a clean. And so when all of us, anyone that started CrossFit before, like, I don't know, 2010, we were also just looking at the phone and like trying to figure it out.
Wow.
Not even our phones back then, our computers.
I didn't even know that. That's wild.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
So I also knew that could work because I had experienced it myself.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So you started in 2018. What were those 700 people? Is that where you're like, I think we have to quit our jobs? We have to go do this?
No, we didn't. Both of us are very much entrepreneurial and very much hustlers, I guess. Both of us are very comfortable having
But
multiple
like
streams of
legitimate legal hustlers.
I mean, maybe not so much for him. That's a different podcast. We were still working on getting Julian to pay his taxes. Um, but no, so I had always had multiple jobs. So even when I was working for CrossFit and the supplement company at the same time, or I was working for CrossFit and I was like helping with this NC Lab stuff, or so I've always
Got it.
been doing all sorts of things. It was when I went on maternity leave. I think we had something around like 1,800 members by then. And I think I told Julian, if we hit 2,000 members, I will not go back after maternity leave. And we did do that. And then for him, it was if we hit 2,500, then he'll sell his business to one of the guys that was helping him run it, and he'll leave, and then we'll both do it. And so, no, it wasn't until, I guess Knox was born in August. So maybe 9 or 10 months in where we stopped doing the other stuff.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of astronomical growth did you guys see in 2020? Because I had heard about street parking and it was, yeah, okay, it's online programming. I get it. I drove to the gym every day and it was fine for me. I think it was in 2018 or I think it actually was 2019. I did a workout at the games. So I'm back-to-back spectator. And and Mayhem had their online program. They had M30, which I know you're very fond of Mr. Froning, and you didn't toilet paper his booth or anything. And I had it, and I was like, oh, M30 is great for on the road because it was dumbbell focused and whatnot. But then my wife started doing street parking. And that's how I got introduced to it, was during the pandemic. You must have seen, like, that must have been such a blessing and a curse all at once.
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely like a perfect storm that was great, and the rain delivered some flowers, but there was a storm.
I have a feeling it was probably terrifying. You must have seen just, was it explosive?
Well, so we had I want to say close to 20,000 members before the pandemic.
Wow.
And so I think somewhere between 15 and 20,000 for sure. And so, I know all of us get a little bit like, yo, we were doing this and we were fine before that. Because we get that a lot. Like people are like, oh, you guys probably became because of, and we're like, no. Like it was going and it was great and it was awesome, but even before that. But the cool thing about, let me tell you the reason why I think the 700 people happened, and then why the growth was so big for us in the pandemic, and why we've actually been able to maintain the numbers in the pandemic. We didn't just lose a bunch of people as soon as it was over, which I'm sure we did, but then they were replaced. Anyway, the trust that I had built in the 8 years of working for CrossFit and in putting out content in other ways, because I was very active on my social media and sharing workouts, and people saw me as an athlete for sure, but equally as a coach before we started. So there was a level of trust in, this person knows what she's talking about. Like, she's worked for CrossFit for this long. She's traveled everywhere and done these seminars. So I think there was an immediate trust there for a lot of people who had followed me and knew who I was. Similar to when the pandemic hit. So we started in 2017. The pandemic is 3 years into, and we had been well known in the space of like, oh, if you work out at home, street parking is a great option.
Right.
And that had already been established. And so these gym owners even, or people who just follow CrossFit online, when the pandemic happened, it was like, oh, well, yeah, if you work out at home, you do street parking. Because we were just, and it wasn't, we have affiliate programming and competitor programming, and over here on the side, we also have this dumbbell program. It's like, no, this is what we do.
Yeah.
This is our 100% focus. And not that there's anything wrong with those other models, but we focused singularly on that.
Right.
And so it was just such an easy thing for gym owners to be like, okay, we're closed for the next couple months. This is a great option for you. Go do that to maintain your fitness. Or people just knew. And so we did see really, really big growth. We did some promotions and stuff because people were battling with, well, do I keep paying my gym and supporting them so they don't go out of freaking business? And so we did some promotions to make it even less expensive for people. And Yeah, so we did see some really big growth though. And okay, where this that all sounds like it was great. Where the storm comes in is anytime you get a swarm of new people into a community that's already established. And we our roots are in CrossFit, but our culture is different in a lot of ways. Um you get a swarm of new people that are like asking all the same questions over and over and over again, or they're like it's just it rattles it a little bit, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. You
It's
were
like if you could combine two high schools. It's
right.
like, there's some cultural differences there. And not to mention the cultural stuff that was happening in the world in general in 2020. There was just, I mean, it was election year and we had all the social justice stuff and the different beliefs around COVID and all of that was just like, and all these new people, because our Facebook group is very active.
It's very active.
And so it was, and I had our second baby on May 3rd of 2020. So it was a lot. It was a lot.
Yeah. I let alone just Facebook, and that enables a whole social media enables a whole different level of people that feel compelled to share opinions and thoughts regardless of accuracy or anything else. There's,
Yeah, one thing that we always say, because I owned that gym, and I know your listeners do these events and they have their own communities, is imagine everything that happened in an in-person gym. So people don't like each other. There's cliques over here. This person's always complaining about the workout. This person can never remember what the workout is. This person's always late. This person, whatever. Now make that 35,000 people, because it's all the same stuff. It's all the same stuff. It really is.
So I want to touch on community because I think this group, I've attended a number of meetups. I would say the group is borderline ravenous when it comes to getting together.
Yeah.
I think also that because there was such an established community beforehand, going into the pandemic, people were extra excited to get back together. I remember my first meetup was in Vegas. Is that 21, I think?
So we did. Oh, you went to the like the rucking one.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was the first one that we had done again.
6-hour workouts.
Well, we were supposed to do a meetup in 2020 in Vegas,
Right.
and we had to cancel it like last minute.
Yeah. But people in the marketing and event space they're realizing that, much like what you said, people will quit a program, they won't quit a relationship. Brands are really starting to figure that out. So everyone wants a community now. That's the big thing, because it's just like with experiences versus events. When you go and you have an experience, there's emotion involved. And now all of a sudden you have this warm and fuzzy memory about a brand and you're like, oh, I like that brand. Community can theoretically do the same thing because it creates a bond to the other people. And now it's not that you're quitting a relationship, you're quitting lots of relationships. As you were starting, I'd love to talk about how you helped foster that community and how you helped really engage people, because that's where a lot of people are right now. And it's not easy. And I want people to understand that the level of authenticity and intention you have to go into it.
Yeah, I would say one of the main things, and I'm sure that this can apply to in-person events big time too, is people just want to be seen. They want to be recognized, and they want to feel like someone knows that I'm here. And so when I owned my gym, it was every person that's in class that day should receive some sort of coaching, and also like a, hey, how's it going conversation at some point. It might be at the end, but at some point they should never leave without having some sort of interaction that's personal, but also that's helping them to improve. That's really hard online. So one of the things that we committed to in the beginning, and we still do the best that we can with, the way that social media is now, it can be difficult. But like I said, we would comment on anyone that used the hashtag street parking or anyone that would ask questions or talk on Facebook. And what we had to do on Instagram was follow people back, because a lot of our members were private. So even if they were posting, we weren't going to see it. And so we would follow them back, and we would follow the hashtag street parking. And because to me, I have friends and family who I would do anything to get them to work out and be consistent. And I know people who, if they posted, it would be really putting themselves out there. And so the last thing we ever wanted was for this like stay at home mom who's super timid and shy to post and have nobody comment on it and not say anything to her. So we were super committed in doing that. And we encouraged members to do that for each other too from the very beginning. Like, hey, follow the hashtag street parking, follow each other, encourage each other, just like you would if you were in person, where you know, in a CrossFit class everybody's high-fiving and saying good job and everything like that. So we were committed from the very beginning to making sure that as many people as possible in every way that we can feel seen. And other things that we would do is like I would repost, and I still do this, members in my story. And it's like, again, maybe this person who has 25 followers on Instagram but posted their vault workout, and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. So now it's in Miranda's story or it's in street parking story. And it doesn't have to be me or the main, it could be anyone that works here. It could be Caitlin or, you know, just that feeling of, oh, somebody sees me is going to spark, okay, I'll show up again tomorrow. And so it was that and fostering that sense of community. And then the other thing that we had to do, and where our culture is different from the CrossFit culture at large, and I'm not blaming this on CrossFit HQ trying to make this their culture, it just is we're like, hey, don't worry about what other people's scores are. Like, we celebrate showing up, we celebrate consistency. Like, jump over your laundry basket if you don't have a box, and that's not less than. That's amazing that you still showed up and did it.
It could be argued it's harder,
right?
because you're like, what am I doing?
Yeah, right. It's harder to be like, well, I don't have the stuff, and it's like, no, just use what you have, and especially during the pandemic, actually, because I mean, buying a pair of dumbbells was like, you might as well go start mining for gold to find, you know? And so we were like, whatever, throw some books in a backpack and just make it happen. And not in a cheesy way, in like it doesn't matter. What it looks like doesn't matter. Just showing up and your effort matters, and celebrating the right things. As soon as you start celebrating performance and athletic performance and the leaderboard and scores, then everybody thinks that that's what really matters. And that's what CrossFit has, you know, they have to battle that all the time because they have the games where we're like, we don't celebrate that. It's cool. We have a lot of really good former athletes and people who are super fit in our community, but we always celebrate consistency and showing up and overcoming. And what at the head, what we celebrate, everybody else now is like, well, this is what's important here. So,
Yeah, I think when you start focusing on the performance and that becomes a measurement, it's very easy to start alienating people as opposed to just doing. You also you did a state of the union, if you will, for street parking, and you talked. In one of my episodes, I'm wearing a More Than Nothing shirt, and we talked a little bit about that. I'm wearing a different shirt today. This is still a street parking shirt, of course. If you don't mind for a second, and then I'm going to ask you another question about wellness overall. Let's talk about More Than Nothing versus Simple Not Easy.
Oh,
Because
yeah,
I know
okay.
this is important to you, and I think there's also a balance, and I feel like it will segue into the next question, because some days More Than Nothing is all you got in the tank, right? And there's
Yeah.
other days where you feel a little better.
Mhm.
So I'd love for you to kind of talk a little bit about where those come from, and then what the real intentionality is behind those terms. So we'll start with More Than Nothing.
Yeah. So More Than Nothing is a hashtag that we used. It became a t-shirt. It's like there's a bunch of podcast episodes that it titled More Than Nothing. And really both of these things, and I think I'm just trying to provide useful stuff for your listeners to think of around their own communities and their own events. You have to pay attention to what's being talked about in your communities and what's going on. And More Than Nothing came from, because we had such an influx of CrossFit and that culture of your score is everything. I know personally from somebody who used to compete that I would have days when I would go to a CrossFit gym that if I didn't feel like I was going to perform what everyone else in the class expected of me because who I was, it made me not even want to go. Like, I don't even want to go. I don't even want to do it because my scores, even when I would work out alone, it's like, I don't feel like using the 35s. Like, I'm just not going to work out today. It's like, well, what's wrong with the 20? 35s. Well, but I'm Miranda. Like I have to use the 35s. You know what I mean? So that culture, we had so many people come from that, and they were overthinking it and overemphasizing what their score was and what weight they used and how they did compared to everyone else. And feeling like we saw comments on Facebook all the time of like, yeah, I did it, but like I didn't really go very hard today, so it doesn't really count. And they were discounting the fact that they showed up at all. And or people like, yeah, I don't do the extra programs. I only do the daily workout, so it's probably not enough. It's just this like talking bad about the fact that they're showing up when everybody has so much going on in their lives. So that first State of the Union, the more than nothing was like, hey, the big problem in the fitness space is consistency.
Right.
Everybody, and I'm positive everybody listening to this has done a fitness program for 8 to 12 weeks and nailed it. That's not the problem. It's not that section. It's forever. That's the problem. And we will all have times in our lives where following a perfect program and giving it your all and having an hour to train at a specific place with specific equipment is not going to happen. And this all or nothing mentality that people have when it comes to fitness is destroying any chance of consistency that any of us have, because all of us will have times, whether it's postpartum or moving or traveling or whatever, there's going to be times where you can't do that and people fall off, right?
Well, it's also with food too.
Oh yeah. And so it's like, well, what if you just did something? And well, what's something? I don't know, anything. 5 minutes of burpees in your hotel room because your flight was delayed 3 times.
I'm all set on that personally, but thank you.
And it's like, well, that's not enough. And it's like, well, what's going to deliver better results? You doing that or you doing nothing? If there's 30 days out of the year, let's say 30 random days where you wouldn't have done anything, you're telling me that those 30 days added up aren't going to deliver more than if you would have done nothing? And so it's trying to change this belief into just showing up and doing as much as you can on each day. And as much as you can might look like nothing compared to what you usually do or what other people would think is enough, but it does add up. It's accumulation, right? And so more than nothing was trying to shift the culture in our community and keep it on message for what our belief is.
Yeah.
Fast forward to the shirt that you're wearing today.
I think I want to add something there because I co-presented at an industry event and we talked about all these things people could do at events, and the big thing that we ended it with was just try something.
Mm-hmm.
Look, you may not be able to dial in the buffet menu the way you want it. You may only be able to offer a fitness class one day. You may be able to get only a few standing tables at the back of the room, but so that people aren't sitting for 8 hours nonstop. Or you might be able to only get your agenda pushed back to, a half hour so that you get a little more time for people to actually get adequate sleep. Or you only have one non-alcoholic beverage
Just water
at your bar.
Water or tequila. Those are the two choices.
But try something because it's what initiates it. And that little bit of, it's momentum, right? It's harder to get something moving.
Oh yeah.
Than if it's slightly
Already
moving.
Yeah. And you're right though. It applies to food. It applies to literally anything. Like, for somebody who's trying to develop a reading habit, which I have for the last couple of years, sometimes I'll read one page, and it's not because I think that, that's not my goal, but it's like, I just got to keep the habit, and it's 11:30 at night and I could just not read, or I could just read one page to maintain that habit.
Yeah.
It's true for your relationships. Like, we won't get into my advice for relationships because I should not be giving advice, but it's like the little things. We always hear that. It's the little things. It's the like text, love you text. It's not the trip to Cancun that holds your marriage together. It's the little things added up. And it's the same thing for anything. It's just being consistent in that stuff. So more than nothing came from, hey, let's redirect. And the fitness industry has done a really good job of making you think that you need the personal trainer and all the supplements and all the time and all the equipment because they want to sell you stuff. That's actually not necessary. Consistency, just show up. So more than nothing is a huge line that is used and phrase that's used in our community. The problem that I saw happen and where the shirt they're wearing today is simple, not easy. This is a new one for us, and it was more from our State of the Union that I did a couple weeks ago is more than nothing is not the default though. Our image for it is like the break in case of emergency.
Right.
You know, what we had seen was people like, oh, more than nothing, more than nothing. And it's like, well, why today though? Like you could have done more today. Also, it's not supposed to be every day. It's supposed to be in those seasons or on those off days or whatever. And we had seen people kind of using it as an escape from discomfort. So I, rallied everybody and I paid attention to our community. And it's like, well, hold on. We do keep it simple, and we will always keep it simple, and we will never encourage members to spend hours or they need a bunch of stuff or anything like that. It's not who we are. That's not what we believe. But we're not here to make it easy for you, because we know that growth or results or improvement comes from discomfort and pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone. So we had to rally everybody back around and say, okay, more than nothing is there for you when you need it, but the program is actually keep it simple, but not easy. And that means something different for every single person in our community. And so it's giving examples of, the vault workout that you did in your hotel, it requires one dumbbell. But the fact that you did it in the hotel is not easy, because you could have been like, oh, I'll just do it when I get home. And then the effort that you put into it, you could have gone, well, I'm here, like I'm traveling. It's kind of like more than nothing, like whatever. You get to make that decision. What am I going to put into this today?
I could have used the 40 and not the 50.
Exactly. I could have actually done the rest.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
we all have to make that decision for ourselves. And the default is, how can I challenge myself today? And sometimes just doing 5 minutes of burpees is like, that took everything I had to even do anything at all. Perfect. You nailed it. But if you're so we don't want people using more than nothing as their default. It's, how can I make this more challenging? How can I push myself outside of my comfort zone? How can I do a few more reps than I would have? How can I not worry about strategizing so much in this workout and just go for it and see what happens? And so but it all comes from paying attention to what people are talking about. And where do we need to course correct here? Or where do we need to get people to understand what we're trying to do for them? And both of those came from that.
So were you seeing or hearing that people, I want to be really careful with the words I choose here.
Don't get in trouble. You'll get kicked out of that. They'll come for you.
I know. That's the other thing that comes with community.
They're going to be picketing in your front yard when you get home.
It's online lynch mobs.
We invented canceling, okay?
It's the more than nothing. Obviously, you felt a need to address this. How were you seeing that more than nothing was becoming a semi-default? Was it people, did you see usage of the hashtag go up? Did you just kind of get overall sentiment?
Yeah, it wasn't so much the hashtag as much as just like because we work out with the people here. Like we could even see it sometimes within our own staff, or even, with myself, I can see it where I'm just like, whatever. And I wouldn't say more than nothing, but it just kind of can become like well, if consistency is the most important thing, it's the only important thing. And it's not true. It's the foundation, and that has to be there, but it's not the only thing. And sometimes people are just like, oh, well, I'm consistent. It's like, but are you growing, or are you just doing the same thing over and over again?
So there was an interesting podcast that a friend of mine had me listen to, and it was Andrew Huberman.
I love it.
And David Goggins.
Okay, I haven't listened to that one.
It came out on New Year's Day.
That guy's nuts.
Both of them.
Yeah.
And they were talking about this new brain science, this new neuroscience that has come out. And I remember it mostly, but I'm probably going to mix it up. Huberman was talking about, there's a section of your brain called the anterior mid something cortex.
I thought you were going to remember. I was going to be really impressed.
Mid frontal cortex. I don't know. But anterior mid something. Yeah. Anyways.
The Huberman cortex.
Yeah. Well, sure. But it grows when you do something you don't want to do.
Oh my gosh. Mine should be really big by now.
Well, here's the thing that was fascinating about it is, take like a cold plunge, right?
I was just thinking about that. Yes.
Okay. So you start doing cold plunges, and you hate them at first, you get a week into it, and then all of a sudden you start enjoying them. Growth stops.
Yes.
When you when something you don't want to do becomes either enjoyable or easy, that part of your brain quits growing
Yes.
unless you start doing something else
Yes.
that you don't want to do.
Yes.
And I was like, holy metaphor, Batman. That
Mhm.
is, and your timing with this science is pretty significant because it doesn't have to be complicated. It has to be uncomfortable.
Mhm.
And you have to do it when you don't want to.
Mhm.
And it doesn't matter what it is. It can be, Goggins was talking about, yeah, I hate running, but I do it every day.
Wow.
I mean, he had a lot of thoughts about it. It was I feel like it was a more personal interview than
Cool.
normal ones
Yeah, I'll have to
because
listen to it.
he talks about himself and how he copes with things. He talks about the fact that he's going to school right now to learn how to do something. And he's like, I have to read this page. I have to transcribe the whole page. I have to
So that
read
he
that
can remember
again.
it.
Yeah, he's like,
Mhm.
learning is hard. And he just really dug into how difficult things are for him in
Mhm.
general. But she was like, oh, this part of your brain must be massive because you do a hard thing every day.
Mhm.
And I think that's a really intense message, but it's also helps people understand it doesn't have to be immensely hard. It just
Mhm.
has to be something you don't want to do.
Yeah. And like it goes back to your question about when we first started at these 700 people and how I said we have a responsibility. Um, I feel a responsibility to say to our community at large, not ever picking out individuals necessarily unless they ask me, but
By the way, I'm going to document for the record. You can always, if you need an example of what to do or what not to do, you can look at my results.
okay. But to say like, hey guys, congrats, we're all very consistent, but you're all being a little bit complacent. Not all, but like I see a level of complacency, and it's you love street parking, you're very consistent, you're all paying your memberships. What do I care? Well, it's my responsibility because you trust me to tell you. You came because you want growth and you want improved health and you want improved fitness. And I'm telling you, like, I think in the podcast that I said there's a ceiling on where you're going to, how much you can grow or how much you can improve if there's just never going outside of your comfort zone. If I've been using the 25-pound dumbbells in my workouts for the last 5 years and I refuse to grab the 30s every once in a while, or maybe put a little bit more weight in that sandbag, or don't strategize.
You've been using it. You should probably refill it anyways.
Yeah, because it dusts out, So my job, like I am a coach and a trainer, right? It's my job to keep kind of nudging you forward. And even though, yes, you're all enjoying this level of fitness that you wouldn't if you weren't consistent, but like for those of you that want more, there's more room for all of us to grow always. And so
It's not about ditching the 25s.
no,
It's about going, I might be able to do this with the 30s.
yeah, find out,
Yeah.
see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. That's definitely how I tend to approach the workouts, especially if I know it's going to be kind of my only thing. Like if I know I don't have extra time, I don't have
Mhm.
anything else. There was this methodology I learned. God, I was probably like 14, and it was the FIT: frequency, intensity, and time.
Mhm.
And it was so basic that those three things make up 100%.
Mhm.
And depending on how frequent you go and how much time you have, your intensity should
Oh
probably
yeah, that's cool.
adjust.
Yeah.
Like if you just making those three things balance with each other that's how I still approach my workouts because I
Nice.
know, okay, this is the only thing I'm going to do. I don't
Go
have
for
time.
it. Full send.
Yeah. It's see how many calories I can get on my
Mhm.
stupid little watch.
Mhm.
Okay. So I think that's an important message. I also want to make sure that people don't think you're like sitting there watching people log their scores.
No,
And
it's just like a general feel. And honestly, I'm not even on our Facebook group that much anymore because I've had to also find balance of we have 3 kids now, and running the business and getting too sucked in. A lot of our staff is on that group, but it's just more of a general feeling from, and quite honestly, a lot of it comes from just watching what's going on in here in our office.
yeah.
Hmm.
Well, so that's a perfect segue. I I'm a big proponent of a lot of people talk about wellness. I don't know if you heard what happened a few years ago at Goop. There was this thing that there was,
Goop is the Gwyneth Paltrow thing.
yeah,
Okay.
just they found out that there was quote toxic wellness happening internally. Like people were like, "Oh, did you meditate today? Oh, for how long?"
It's like a leaderboard of wellness.
Yeah,
It's like a
yes,
competition for who
it was
can
like
do the most thing. And that's the thing. It's like a checklist at that point.
right,
Yeah.
which I have always been a proponent of. Wellness means different things to different people, and I had that personal experience during the pandemic because I always thought fitness was the definition of wellness. I'll be like, yeah, I don't go meditate, whatever, I don't care. And then during the pandemic, I had my own. I'm very happy traveling and knowing I have trypophobia in a major way. If I don't have a flight on the calendar, I'm like, what's going on?
You know, it's so funny. When I traveled, I didn't want to go every single time. Maybe that's
Yeah,
my David Goggins story.
fair enough.
I never wanted to go, and I was always happy once I was doing it. I loved my job when I worked for CrossFit, but I never wanted to go.
If there is nothing on the calendar, I like, and so when March happened, by like May, I was losing it, and I had to come to terms with my own mental well-being.
Addiction to travel.
Yes, because the other thing which was really interesting is I was super excited about being home for a couple months. I was like, great, my meals are going to be on point. My workouts I'm going to crush them. I'll be in the best shape of my life.
That prison fitness.
Yeah. Well, we were fortunate. We had a side yard. It was sunny. We had equipment that we brought back from the gym we went to. So like we had access to everything. But I was working out every day. I was eating right. And I thought, okay, I'm going to be in the best shape of my life. And then come May, I was losing it. And I'm like, I don't get it. Why isn't my fitness doing what it's supposed to be doing for my mentality? And that's where I had my epiphany and where I started thinking about wellness differently. So I'd like to ask you, what is wellness, that big, giant term? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, actually, it's so funny that you asked this because we talked about this in our team meeting yesterday. And when I was working for CrossFit, there was one of the lectures that we would give that we would talk about this continuum from sick to well to fit. And on one
I saw your Instagram post.
Yeah, on one end, you can have measurements that if you were a doctor or somebody, you could look at that and be like, oh, this person's about to die. Like a blood pressure, a resting heart rate, like hormone levels, how much muscle mass they have. It's like, ooh, this is not good. Like this person's on death's door. Versus if you go all the way to the other side and you look at fit, you might see like, your games athletes as far as performance goes, but some of them might not have the best blood markers, quite honestly. But you could
let's not get into that.
But you could look at like, again, like resting heart rate, and blood pressure and fasting insulin levels, whatever. Anything that can be measured can be put somewhere in there.
It's all mechanistic.
Yes. And where most people, like it sounds like you and where I have been in the past, mental health, emotional health, the health of your relationships, people wouldn't consider that to be on that continuum. It's like a separate thing, right? Where I've grown so much, especially since having children, but even back when I would give these lectures, one of the things that we would say is, you can be the fittest person in the world. And back then it was Rich. It was like, you can be Rich Froning, but if you have no friends, and I'm not saying Rich has always had a lot of friends. This is not about him, okay? But if you have no friends, nobody likes you, and you're depressed all the time, like, are you really healthy? Is that really? And so for me, all of that stuff has to come together, and you're not going to be able to maximize all of it. I always make jokes about Huberman, and I love Huberman. Actually, one of the guys that works here is friends with him. But like, he doesn't have kids, from what I understand. If I did all the shit and the protocols and all of that stuff, like, who has time for this, Andrew? Like, this is not realistic. And you're not even getting into talking about relationships and spirituality, like all of this stuff. So you can't max it all out. And what most of us do is we choose the ones that we like and we go heavy into those and kind of like avoid the other ones.
Right.
And that works for a time until you're stuck at home and you realize, oh, I was like using travel as like a form of entertainment and distraction and whatever else it was for you, So for me, wellness is being aware of your blind spots. And Chris, actually, our designer who worked here, he painted a perfect picture of this yesterday. I'm going to share it, but it was Chris that did it, not me. He used to skateboard, and he was a skateboarder.
Mm.
And he would say, if one of your wheels had like a little flat spot, it messed up everything. And I'm not a skateboarder, but he would say, like, you would hear that, and he's like, and so you'd go and you'd sand out the flat spot. And he's like, what you're talking about is look for your flat spots. Stop putting so much time and effort and energy into the stuff that's already dialed in for you. Go search for the flat spots. And some of that's very easy to measure, like your body composition or your weight or your blood pressure. And some of it, you actually have to just like look in the mirror and maybe do some journaling.
Yeah, you might be your own flat spot.
Yeah. Because you might be filling your day with all this to-do list, protocol, Andrew Huberman, cold plunge, sauna, workout, grip strength, like who knows what else. And you're avoiding thinking about how you're doing just as a being, as a person. You can't sit still. And so for me, wellness is trying to not maximize, but trying to look for those things and improve in all of those areas without it becoming, like what you're saying, a to-do list. And that's really hard to do. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, I think it does. It's about balance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And another person that I really enjoy, that I read his book recently, and we were at a Dave Ramsey conference, which, speaking of events, they do a really good job. We were at a Dave Ramsey conference, and one of the speakers was Dr. John Deloney. And he was talking about, like, you can't separate mental, physical, like you can't be super, like I have the best mental health in the world, but I just destroy my body with soda and fast food. It's like, well, that's not.
I saw that clip you posted.
Do you really, like, is that really taking care of yourself? Like, what's going on there, and how is that impacting your life and your confidence and your, health overall? So you can't, people try to silo them, and it's really not how it works.
I remember hearing Fraser talk about the reason he would win is because every single decision he made, if it was getting invited out to go hang out with friends, whatever, the only question was, will this help me win the games? So could he go on date nights? No. Could he go hang out with his friends and like go to pizza? No. Like, that's how he was making all his decisions. So he ended up in this silo. And I think we saw a lot of that in mental health with the CrossFit games. I think it was last year, where a bunch of people, a lot of the young girls were like, no, I'm out. This is not healthy, because it is a balance. I watched the Blue Zone documentary on Netflix, and it boiled down to 4 things. We, with us, we talk about mindfulness, movement, and meals, which are kind of the 3 things. But then the 4th thing that basically the Blue Zones talk about is purpose. And that's what really 4 wheels like a skateboard. That's what that reminded me of, is you have to bring all these things within balance of each other, so that and it's going to be different for everyone. Right?
And I think it's okay too to be like, this year I'm focusing on my physical health. Like, I'm going all in, and like you bolster that up and you get some really good habits. It's like, okay, this year I'm keeping as much of that as I can, but I'm focusing. I think it's okay not to try to focus on all of it at once. That's way too much. Like, develop some simple habits around this thing. Once those are in place, then develop some simple habits around this thing. And I think what most people try to do is they'll listen to the Huberman podcasts and think they need to do all of it. And now we're back to, hey, maybe more than nothing.
Yeah.
For some of this stuff.
Right.
Maybe it's a 1-minute meditation or a 1 page of a book that you read, or like, let's just start doing something toward those things.
Yeah.
Because it's so overwhelming.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think overwhelming is a perfect segue to the next question, which is really about how you maintain your wellness. And so I'm going to rattle off the list because it's terrifying to me. We don't have kids. So you're a mom, you're a business owner, you're a wife, you're essentially a public figure because your business has done so well.
Yeah.
That's a lot to deal with. So how do you, I don't want to say, how do you do it all? Because it feels like such a cliche question, but when we talked about this question beforehand, I saw your face like, I don't know.
Poorly.
Like, how do you, but what, maybe it, and I think a lot of it might be mindset, but like, how do you manage all those expectations of you, especially in the world we live in where there's so much seemingly expected of you, right?
Yeah, I think kind of what I'm thinking about right now, because I don't have like a elevator pitch answer to this question. Although
I'd prefer that you didn't. Like,
I am asked it usually when I go on podcasts and stuff. Um, the more you're trying to do, the more the wellness and knowing what you need and taking care of yourself, the more important it is. But the more simple it needs to be because you're trying to juggle so many things. So, for example, like our sleep has not been great since we had our first child. And that's something that eventually we'll get back to. But it impacts us a lot. So it's like finding ways to make sure, one of the things that allows me to have, because I'm also going to be 42 years old this year and I have 3 children under 6 and doing all of that. One of the reasons that I am able to have the energy, even with the lack of sleep and all the things that we're doing, is because I've maintained my fitness and because I know how to eat and for sustained energy levels and all of that stuff, and coffee, of course. But um, the more you're trying to do, the more you need to pay attention to your physical health and your physical fitness, or you're just not going to have the energy to do it. But I would say in the last 2 years, slowing down for moments. So we have an ice bath at our house now that I do every morning, and I get into it like pretty much first thing, like before coffee, before breakfast, just to take a moment before I have to deal with the chaos of our children.
and your mid-singular cortex. That's it.
Yes. Wow, you were still thinking about that this whole time.
Well, I quit thinking about it, so then it came back to me. Okay, because I was thinking about the ice bath triggered it.
Yeah, and so it's just that quiet moment of like, it's a form of meditation, because similar to our workouts, and I've always said like, oh, the workouts when you're in and doing intense fitness, you can't think about anything else. You're not like, oh,
it's dark.
Yeah.
Just think about the sweet release of death.
You're not thinking about tomorrow's meeting or what you said to someone earlier. If you're actually going, and the ice bath is very similar to that. Like you're not thinking about anything else. So it is a moment of just focusing on your breathing or whatever. And then I have a practice now where I go and we have a sauna too, where I'll sit in there and read. It's like a daily devotion type book and journal really quick. And I'm in there for maybe like 5 to 7 minutes. So the whole thing lasts like 10 minutes in the morning, but it sets me up for the day. Finding little windows like that. Taking walks has been a big thing for me. Like I've put a huge emphasis on walking and getting outside, just to reset my brain, to bring the chaos levels back down to like baseline. But quite honestly, I would say the most important thing that I've learned in the last few years is lowering my expectations. And it's not lowering your standards or like wanting to do less, but just if something goes haywire, I want to be in control of everything. I want everything to go perfectly. I want, just to, well, all right, well, so what are we going to do? And it's just lowering especially with children. You just have to lower the expectations. Because if you have this idea of how Christmas morning is going to go, or because we're homeschooling our kids too, or how that's going to go.
Oh, so you're a teacher also.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you just set yourself up for failure, and it could be the same for your workouts. Like, I'm going to get this score. And it's like, just go hard and see what happens,
You might surprise yourself.
Yeah, you
one
might,
way or the other.
do better. And sometimes it does. A lot of days go better than you think they're going to go. But yeah, that's it, is finding moments of reset, and they can't be complicated. Like as much as I would love to go to a hot yoga class 3 times a week, but if I rely on that for my mental health or my like meditation, I would miss it so often. So it's like, well, what can I do at home in 10 minutes that's really simple? And that's the same for the fitness. Like if I had to rely on going to a gym and being there at a certain time, it just wouldn't happen. And then, we have a couples therapist, and I have a personal therapist, and they ask me like, well, how, are you, when I'm going through hard seasons, how are you eating enough? Are you sleeping enough? The answer to sleep is always no. But the cool thing is when the therapist asked me, I said, my habits are so ingrained with eating. Even when I'm like in a dark space, I pretty much maintain them. because it's just so ingrained. So developing all those things to take care of your body so that when, you're struggling or going through chaos or work is stressful or whatever, those things are just second nature. It helps so much.
Yeah. I had a friend of mine and someone else who had been on the show say you have to take care of your vessel because there are more people you can't. I think the same thing of you can't meditate your cholesterol down, right? But on the flip side of that, you can't lift until you're mentally healthy. You
No.
So,
It
but
can
I love
help.
that
It
you
can help
said
you like overcome challenges, but yeah.
I love that you said lower expectations, but not your standards. I think that's a big thing. I think
Just your daily expectation, not your overall goal or vision or whatever,
right.
but like what's going to happen today. And it's not, you still do your best all day long, but not measuring your best as to what you thought the outcome needed to be for it to count. It's very similar to the more than nothing or the like, don't
Yeah.
worry about your score. Just worry about your effort level,
Right. Well, we are an industry of people who love control. It's what we do. We control chaos on a regular basis. So I think, but I think, that old adage of failure to plan is planning to fail. And so taking the time to do that and having solid habits really help. With speaking of goals, it is January. This is going to air at the end of January, and some people do resolutions, some people don't. Either way, I think we're all trying to get better. What's next for for event professionals? This is probably going to get in the weeds on street parking, so it's up to you if you want to keep listening.
No, definitely keep listening.
But you should. What's next for street parking?
Yeah, so we have some really cool things coming up.
There's the vault, which is super fun
the
theme this year.
2024 vault, as of this recording, we're in week 2 of that, and it's one workout a week for 25 weeks to keep people consistent to showing up at least once a week. And we know that once, again, like you're saying, if the ball is already rolling, well, I worked out on Monday, I might as well work out on Tuesday.
Right.
You're way more likely to get in 2 or 3 workouts a week if you're committed to the one.
And you can join me on Zoom every week doing it at some
random time.
Yes. I wish I...
Lower your expectations, people. Right. He'll do it when he can.
But I will do it, and that's what matters.
Exactly.
Okay.
So yeah, the vault, we're in week 2 of the vault, and it's our 5th season or our 5th year of the vault, and people just love it. This week, so by the time this airs, it should be out. It's fine. We have our nutrition programs. We have 2 30-day daily, you open up and they're on the app, and you can log what you did that day. And there's the super simple balanced plate.
Cool.
And then there's the 800-gram challenge, which is with Optimize Me Nutrition, or EC Sinkowski, who I used to work with on the CrossFit seminar staff, has developed that one. But it's just for members, and they'll be in the app, and people can improve their nutrition by thinking of something little and making small changes one day at a time for 30 days. So that should be out by the time this comes out. We're working on a lot of stuff with kids, and we have been for a while, but where there's kids stuff that eventually will be loggable for them, and they'll have their own little badges and their own things that they can do. We have a great kids coach, so that should happen this year. We do have kids content now, but to make it a little bit more official.
There's a Vault Kids, right?
Okay. Yeah, and we put out a bunch of kids stuff too with Coach Bree. And then something else that we've been working on and should continue to keep rolling this year and be able to offer more of is our corporate stuff. So we know that one really great way to build community is shared suffering. And so it's not necessarily that you're going to get everybody in your office to do the workout together, because you might not have the facility for that or want to, but it's like, hey, we all do street parking here, or it's offered, and like a bunch of our staff here does street parking, and then you come in to the office and you talk to somebody who's not even in your department. You're like, yo, bro, did you do the vault this week? Like, what's up with that? And otherwise, you guys might not have ever had anything to talk about. Or we've seen it because DH, who is our corporate coach, he comes from Northern California as well. And both of us were in that Silicon Valley, and he was coaching at Twitter and he was coaching at Google. And you would see the CEO at Twitter doing the workouts with the the secretary on the first floor or the receptionist on the first floor, and otherwise they would have never met each other. People within their departments who have nothing else in common can talk about that workout was messed up, like that was not cool, don't forget to log, or whatever. And so allowing our program to foster that sense of community in a corporate setting, we know it works because we've seen it. And so we're trying to build off of that and offer some offerings to corporations, big and small. We have some police and fire stations, which works really well for them. We're working on a couple bigger ones as well, and like some schools and stuff like that, which is cool.
Nice. Yeah, I that's what I love about events and doing workouts at events, because you start realizing that there's different people that enjoy different things and that you would have never known that they like doing those things. And it creates this shared common value that they have with each other. So I love that that's an easy way of building camaraderie and breaking down relationship silos within corporations.
You know what I think is funny too about events, and I'll go back to the Ramsey event that I was at, and it's not to call them out or anything, but I will a
yes,
little
this is
bit.
the good stuff. I can't wait.
I will a little bit.
I'm
So
excited
if
now.
you have to just clip this, because since it's so far in, we might have.
I'll send it to him with a quote for me to come fix their event.
I think I might have mentioned it to one of the guys there, but anyway, the whole event, like I said, that Dr. John Deloney was speaking, and he was talking about you can't separate mental health and spiritual health and physical health, and he nailed it. And he is a very fit person who I know posts about that stuff a lot. However, every time that the host would come on stage, he would joke about, oh, at the Ramsey events, you just eat all the food and it's just all desserts. And it was like a kind of like a running joke. And it's like, you guys are up here talking about like, this was for business owners, but it was so much deeper than that. They were talking about like self-improvement and all of this. And it's like, how are you going to feed people desserts all day long and talk about it like it's a joke? And then come over here and say like, you should be worried about all this. I don't know. I didn't like that. And I think what offering a workout and some healthy food does is whatever the event's about, it says this stuff matters. If it didn't matter, we wouldn't put it in the schedule. If it didn't matter, we wouldn't provide this type of food. If you're going to improve your culture of your business, if you're going to improve yourself as an individual or as a leader, if you're going to whatever, this stuff has to be part of it because it does matter. And it was a bit of a miss for me for that.
I feel like I'm gonna. Well, I pay you monthly, so I don't owe you any more money. That is why I am doing this. That is the crusade I am on. There seems to be this rampant understanding of corporate wellness matters. But then when you go to a conference, you go to a sales kickoff, you go to it, they just throw it all out of the fucking window.
Open bars and desserts and like everything, right?
It's chaos, and my whole thing is it's not about putting out lunch and it's grilled chicken and steamed broccoli, the end, and you have to eat what it is. But it is about, because you can alienate people with the wrong kind of food. It is about giving people agency so that for the people that want to make the right choices, it's there. And then they feel that sense of belonging, right? They feel
seen.
They feel seen because they don't have to go hunt for their own food because all there is carbs and whatnot, let alone the brain impacts of feeding people the wrong types of food and high sugar and whatnot, then locking them back in a room. But there seems to be this disconnect in corporate wellness versus corporate events. And it's just not transcending. And that is what I'm really on a mission to try to help accomplish, because events are expensive. They cost a lot of money to put on, hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, depending on how many people are there. And they throw it all away because they make poor food choices. They keep people up late. They're liquoring them up the whole time.
Well, it's like,
and then they laugh about it like, oh, ha, ha, ha. Why?
Yeah, the joke was like, you always gain 5 to 10 pounds when you come to a Ramsey event. And I'm like, but why is that the message? Like, why is that funny? That's not funny.
If you look at your step counts when you go to a conference,
it's nothing.
It's a lot of times, if it's in Vegas, it's through the roof.
Right. Yeah.
Why are you not losing 5 to 10 pounds when you go to a conference?
Well, and you want, like, we had an amazing experience at that event, and we thought it was great. All the speakers were phenomenal, and we were able to navigate the food situation. We were still working out in the hotel, but like, how much more empowered and because it was 5 days long, if somebody comes home from something and they made pretty good food choices and they were able, because how many people at that event that we were at were maybe trying to lose weight but had to like kind of like push it off to the side until they got home, or like, so giving, like you're saying, giving them those options, and how much better would people feel both physically and like empowered of like, yeah, we were eating good food, like quality food. We were like exercising as a
Why is it so
group.
hard?
And also I learned all these cool leadership skills.
And you actually remembered them because you weren't
Asleep
or hungover or
Yeah.
anything else. Like we spend all this money on these events, and then we just kind of piss it all away by how we take care of people or don't take care of people at these events. I really hope that in 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, that the CrossFit health seminar that's happening in Austin has the right things on their buffet lines.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm going to that actually. I'm on the panel for that. So yeah.
That is what I heard. That's why I brought it up. So maybe send Dave a text and be like, "Are you going to feed us right?"
I think they usually do a pretty good job.
Okay.
But I don't know who's in charge over there. So we'll see.
Well, I will say that there tends to be one of the big struggles, and the reason I'm trying to arm my industry with facts and figures and science is because there's a disconnect on a lot of people who are planning these events being able to push this information up. So when it comes from the top that we want to do this, it makes it a lot easier. So I hope that whoever is in charge is being told, hey, we are frickin' CrossFit. If there are Cokes on the line, there's someone who's going to lose it because there's a whole nother thing there.
Yeah.
But like, because at the CrossFit health seminar in Madison.
You went to it?
I did not.
Okay.
But the wife did. And she goes, there were sodas at the seminar.
Yeah.
And this was before COVID. So
interesting.
He who shall not be named was still in charge. Yeah. And there were Coca-Colas in cans there which I get, but maybe they were trying to provide both. But I think there really is a disconnect in that vein, that's really what's befuddling to me and why I'm trying to do this. So thank you for being a part of it.
Of course.
Okay. Right. I think that's it.
Yeah, cool.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining Return on Wellness. For help integrating these ideas, please scan the QR code. We sincerely hope you join us for our next episode of Return on Wellness.